All right, so I am presenting on how to analyze a poem, and the objective is for students to be able to know where to begin when analyzing a poem and be able to apply those tools to a variety of different poetry on their own. And I used Common Core State Standard number 5, Reading Standard for 7th graders. So I put together a couple of rules that students can go through and use when they're analyzing their own poem, just so that they kind of have somewhere to start. So it's observing, marking it up, connecting, reading, post-reading, a main idea, theme and tone, and then rereading. So I'm going to go through all of these different steps a little bit slower and with an example so that you can understand how to apply it. So number 1 is observe, and I'm using the poem Fire and Ice by Robert Frost as an example. So I'm going to read that now aloud. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So the first thing I recognized about this poem is the title, Fire and Ice, and the couple different times where fire and ice are referenced throughout the poem. I also see that this poem is pretty short, and that there's also some rhyming going on, so I decided to label that rhyming. So I see that for fire, there's a couple things that rhyme with it. So fire, desire, and then fire again. So I labeled all of those with an A. And so then on line 2, I see that there's ice. And there are a couple of things, again, throughout the poem that also rhyme with ice. So we see here ice, twice, ice, and suffice. And then there are 2 outstanding lines that don't rhyme with either A or B, so they're labeled C because they rhyme with one another. So that's going to be hate and great, and like I said again, labeled with a C. So next, we're going to be marking it up and just talking about what does this poem make you think of? What does the lines make you think of? So the first thing that I thought of whenever looking at this poem was just the contrast of fire and ice. It's interesting too about how it feels like you can only pick one. You can't have fire and both ice together because they don't mix. So about this whole choosing of one thing and how the poem chose the fire. So then connecting. So what does this poem make you think of? Is there something in your own life that you connect to with this poem? Is there a different movie or book or other poem that you read that this poem reminds you of? So the big thing that I connected to with this was just the emotion. This poet talks a lot about just really intense emotion of desire and of hate, and I'm thinking to myself, well, I have hated things, I've desired things, so I can relate to that poem in this sense of desiring and hating, just having those really intense emotions. So then we're going to read this again. We're going to read it out loud. Poetry is meant to be read aloud, so that's a really important thing to do. So I'm going to do that again. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if I had to perish twice, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So then after reading this out loud, let's think about what jumped out at you after that read aloud. So the thing that really jumped out to me, again, is just how different fire and ice are. But that also that the poet chose fire. But then saying down here that if he could have done it again, that he would have chosen ice. So I'm seeing that he would have chosen ice down in these last 3 lines that say, to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. Those last 3 really stuck out to me during that time where I read it aloud again. So 6, we're going to be going line by line to try to understand more so what the poet is talking about. All right. Some say the world will end in fire, some say in ice. So again, that contrast of thinking that the world is going to end, but people think different things about how that's going to happen. Fire and ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. So it seems that the poet is equating fire and desire, that they kind of coincide with one another, and that fire is the destruction that the poet has chosen. But if I had to perish twice, so perish twice, we see that he's kind of saying, but if I could do it again, if I had another life, if I could choose one more time, I think I know enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great and would suffice. So I think I know enough of hate. So hate and ice, it looks like here he is equating hate and ice. And he's saying that they're also great and would suffice. So he chose fire, and he thinks that that's great, and he knows that that will work. But he's saying that if he could do it twice, like how we talked about up here, perish twice, ice would also totally work, and it would be great, actually. So there we see that. So then what is the theme and tone now? So what kind of emotion do you think that the author is trying to get across? What kind of message? So I think that this poem seems to be kind of somber and really looking at the inevitability of life. Like we said, he could have chosen fire and he could have chosen ice, and they would have both been great and sufficed, because people think that there are different ways that the world will end, but we all just know that the world will end. So I think that this is a big theme in the poem of inevitability, and that you can live a full life, but that the world will always end. So then we're going to reread and reread and reread. Every single time that you read a poem many times over, more things are going to end up sticking out to you. So then you can kind of pick more things out and come to understand the poem a little bit better. So I really hope this helped. I know that poetry can be really scary, but I hope that these tools were really helpful in aiding you to be able to kind of break down poems. So now I'm going to ask you to try it on your own with another Robert Frost poem called Nothing Gold Can Stay. So make sure to write this down in your journal and then just mark it up with your pencil so that you can figure out what this poem is saying using all of these different tools that we have talked about and gone through with fire and ice. All right, good luck. You're going to kill it.